guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Clubmobile.
Good morning, everyone.
We have another really great guest joining us today. From the Pacific, we have Joshua Bitton. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, everybody. How are we doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this with us.
No
We're
problem.
so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I have a little dog named Friday, and she might just like run in and run out. And
That's fine.
just know that's happening.
It just adds to the cute factor.
His Girl Friday. I love that.
That's correct. That's why I named her that.
That's amazing. It's one of my favorite movies.
Quintessential movie of that kind of genre.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
So as you know, as we've mentioned, and as always, it's going to be really relaxed. It's not like a solid Q&A. We're just really curious about your time learning about the Pacific Theatre of War and how you got into the show. So was it sort of an open call? Was it a solid audition? How did it happen for you?
From the process for me was, which I think was for most of the guys, but I had really toiled as an actor, for a while. And I had just booked my first television pilot, which I was unrepresented. I didn't have an agent, but the casting director had asked me to be the other actor reading with actors. And the producers of the show wound up screen testing me for one of the leads, and I got it. And from that, the casting director was like, we have to find you an agent. And I got my first like really good agent in Los Angeles, a guy named Charles Silver, who I'm no longer represented by, but who I adore. So Charles, if you're watching this, I miss you. And the second audition they got for me was for the Pacific, and it was in December. I still remember the timeline of it. So I auditioned in December. Every guy who auditioned for the Pacific, in my understanding, in the beginning, auditioned for either Barcelona or Lecky, and maybe Sledge. And I read for Lecky, and didn't hear anything. It was the biggest audition. There's Friday playing with something. I auditioned for Lecky. I didn't hear anything. I was so excited. I was like, this is what I need an agent for. And that was in December. In April, I got a call from my manager, who I'd been with before. She was my only representative, Renee. And she said, you have a callback for JP Morgan. And my literal response was, I didn't audition for a bank commercial. I'm not sure what we're talking about. And she said, no, JP Morgan in the Pacific. And I was like, what? And then they sent me, like the breakdown and the whole thing. And, and there was my favorite stage direction of all time. It was like, you hear someone scream, move Marines. And then it says in parentheses, this is Sergeant JP Morgan, short, saturnine. And then in parentheses, it said, not the Gazillionaire. And I thought that was really cute. So I had the callback with the casting director, Meg Lieberman, I'm still friends with. She's the best. And then she said in the room, so there's a callback. I want you to meet the producers tomorrow. I think it was tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So now in April, I have my third audition for the Pacific. I walked into the waiting room at this place in Santa Monica. And I was like, that guy's on the OC. That guy's on this. Like they were all famous. And I thought, there's just no shot of me moving any further, but this is the biggest thing I've ever kind of gotten involved with. And the audition for JP, one of the scenes was a joke. He answered, it was cut, they rewrote it, but in the auditions, it was Barcelona asks why I chose to be a Marine instead of in the Army. And I say, well, my dumbass, it was a joke I heard. And then I would tell the joke. But in the joke, because the way television's often written, it was like 60% of the joke. And then there was like a little jump cut where like 2 lines were cut out of the joke. And then it went to the end of the joke. You're like a small time cut for whatever purpose. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to walk into a room with these like writers and producers and tell kind of a joke. So I just wrote the rest of the joke so that it
That's
made sense.
amazing.
And I went in and I told the joke, and Tony Toe was in there, and Bruce McKenna and Graham Yost, and I think someone else too. I just can't remember because I was like, who the fuck are these guys? And it was in a small office, and I did my thing, and I walked out and was like, and then I bumped into Laurie Metcalf, who I
Wow.
had seen on stage, who's one of the greatest stage actors of all time, let alone television actors. And I was like, hey, and she looked at me like, oh, some fan. And I was like, I saw you do All My Sons at the Geffen. It was the best theater performance I've ever seen. And she was like, oh God, for theater, that's so nice. And years later, I got to really know her, which is a total weird tangent. Anyway, I left, and my reps were all very excited. They said, how'd it go? I said, I went really well. I was like, they laughed. Tony Toe actually said in the room, I haven't laughed at that joke in 3 years. And I was like, well, I did my job, but there's no way I'm going to get it. And then a month later, so now December was my first audition. Now it's May. So it's 5 months later. I get a call to go meet to do a chemistry read with the first actor that was cast as Basilone, because there was a recast that happened in our boot camp. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, it was crazy.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think people know this story. So if you guys want to ask, you can. So
Go ahead.
I met with him. His name was Val Lauren. Great guy, great actor. Different than John, like very different, energetically different, whatever. And so also that process showed me how shitty message boards and the internet could be early on. So I read with him, and I left. And there was a thing that happened to me in that callback, which was I was in a waiting room, and Keith Nobbs was in the waiting room, right? My best friends. I didn't know him yet. I met him that day, but we had all these mutual friends from New York. Annie Parisi was there, and a couple other actors. And I sat at a desk in the waiting room, and there was a piece of paper on the desk face down. And I was just nervous, and I turned it over, and it said, actors we'd like to cast. And then it had a list of actor names and roles. And next to my role was my name only. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be looking at this.
Throw it up. Throw it away.
And then my brain was like, don't fuck this up. Don't fuck this up. And then I went in and I read, and we did the scenes, and we played around, and I went to leave, and Tony Toe bumped into me by the bathroom, and he said, hey, Josh, next time we do this, I want you to play that scene the way I adjusted it. And so I had heard from some people who had gone out for Basilone and Lecky that they had a huge callback at Playtone where Spielberg and Hanks were in the room. And actually, I found out later, Steven Spielberg was operating a handheld camera. So the actors were waiting with an actor, and Steven Spielberg is like camera operating, and nobody told them that was going to happen. Everybody was like, "Oh shit!" And I didn't have another callback. I wound up getting an offer and getting the greatest phone call of my life. Charles Silver called me and said, "Josh, you are Tom and Steven's first and only choice for the role." And
that's amazing.
That's awesome.
I said, I'm going to need you to say that sentence again.
It's so surreal to hear that Spielberg and Hanks.
Yeah. And he said it again. And I went, holy shit. And he went, yeah. And then there was like this weird little period of time where my passport was going to expire like 4 months after we were supposed to leave. And they would not close your deal until you had a passport. Like I had to get my passport extended. And at the time it was like post 9/11, passports took like a year. You had to pay extra. And, and I was like in a panic that because my brain is going, this can't be happening. This is something's going to go wrong. And the day my passport appeared in the mail, the next day I got a box like this with books, with the helmet for my pillow, with the Old Breed, and like 10 other books. And they were like, do your research. So I started reading and sold my car because I was going to Australia I thought they told us it was going to be a year. For me, it was like 5.5, almost 6 months, because I was out at the end of episode 3. and but none of us knew how long, I mean, even that, in the beginning, the first scripts I got in episode 3, I had one line. And then one day I showed up on set and they were like, there's a new episode 3. And I read it and I was floored by the stuff they put in for me and Seda to have together.
Yeah.
And because John Seda and I, along with Bernthal and Ian Meadows and Eamon Farron, like we became a family. Like,
yeah.
John Seda became one of, if not my closest friend, along with Bernthal, and Ian. We were, along with the Lecky crew, because we were all in boot together,
Yeah.
So that was sort of the experience of auditioning for it, and all the feelings that
you can when I've just gone through a rewatch in preparation for this, and I ended it on episode 3 because that's one of the last times we see you. You mentioned that you all became like a family, and you can see it, you can sense it.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing. Going back to boot camp, how was that? And the infamous Dale Dye. Everyone has a Dale Dye story.
I mean, you audition for this show not knowing you're going to be tossed into, Marine boot camp, right?
Hell.
First week they put us all under like a big tent. We all met to find out that the next morning we were leaving for boot, and it was like 20 or 21 actors, and then like 45 former Aussie military who we call them the A Corps, because they're like, if we watched The Pacific together, I could be like, that's Shaw, and I like that. These were our dudes. We were in boot with them, and we kind of all filed in, and all of a sudden, there's a Marine going, and we were like, oh shit, what the fuck is happening? And then the next morning, we got on a bus and we drove out there, and it was I had to pee. We got on the bus at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, 0600, and we got on the bus. Then we drove and we picked up the A Corps where they were all staying, and we like sort of refiled into the bus. And John Seda and I were in the back seat in the back left corner of the bus, and we're holding our ditty bags, with all our shit in them. And I turn to John and I whisper, "Oh shit, I gotta pee." And I hear Garcia, one of the Marines who trained us, scream, "Shut your fucking piles back there! Shut the fuck up!" And we're like, and then we proceed to drive for like an hour and a half.
Oh God.
And I mean, I'm not like, oh, I had to tinkle. Like
I
was in pain. And John Sade is such a sweet human being that I'm going, man, this is like the fact. He's going, I think we're almost there. He has no idea where the fuck we are. We're in the northeast of Australia, but he's just trying to give me hope. Then we get off the bus, and I ask this, I don't even know the proper way to address people. Sir, sergeant, corporal, you learn real quick, right? If you got brass, it's sir. If you don't, that's a working man, and you call them by their fucking rank. And they made it very, very clear to us. And so I asked for permission to pee, and he said, "Go ahead." And I took one step, and he went, "Belay that." And I had to stop. And then we had to march 65 men to where our campsite would be, which included, at one point, there was a river or like a stream, but wide. And the bridge over it was a literal fallen tree. So it was like this wide. And we had to go one by one with our bags on our shoulders and march over this bridge, which took a long ass time. And it was like a 4 or 5 mile hike. So it took, I don't know,
another hour at least.
30 minutes, an hour. And when we got there, they let the first group go out to pee. And I peed for what I'm pretty sure was 4.5 minutes. And they started yelling, "Nobody else gets to pee till everyone comes back." And I just threw my hands up. I've told this before. And I'm like,
you're going to have to wait.
Y'all are going to have to wait. And that to me was like sort of what it was like in a nutshell, is that we learned real fast. We started setting up our hooches, right? And our hooches were 2 men, like pup tents, and each person in their bag had one half. and you had to find someone with a matching half, and they basically told you who you were bunking with. And I was bunking with Val because Val was at Boot. John Seda was not there on the same flight with us because originally it was Barcelona, Morgan, and a private. And that private was going to die. And there was a thing written in the show where there'd be flashbacks to him, which is the thing that haunted Barcelona. Because, I mean, obviously, John Barcelona saw a lot of men go, a lot of his men. So they picked one. And then they decided they thought it would be a better story arc if it was 3 like salty sergeants, and one became a war hero, one was a working man that just was a sergeant, and one died. And that it could have been like the idea being, because the way Barcelona really came through, you know, he was a hero, but he didn't think he was just a Marine. So I think for him, it was like it could have been any one of us. And I guess there had been a conversation going back and forth between casting and HBO about who they thought the right person was. And they thought for this, like the thing about John Seda that was beautiful in his performance was he was like our dad, or he was like my brother. And it was like the dad and the 2 uncles who ran the platoon. And Val's energy intake was just different. And we didn't know this, but there had been an ongoing conversation behind the scenes, I guess, about, we did a big table read of a few of the scripts, and, you know, you could feel pressure in the room, you know, if it wasn't an audition. I didn't think it was an audition, but some of the guys were worried because big stakes and big money and all this stuff. And so they made a decision that Val wasn't the right energy, and they moved John Seda from my left at boot camp to my right, and he became Barcelona. And he had tested for Barcelona, and I think he had a lot of people who really thought that that was the guy who it should have been. And Val had to go home, you know, and he got paid. But this is why I think one of the reasons I bring this up is that I remember coming back from the Pacific, and at the time, like the internet, we were all on it, but it was like IMDb was the message board for things like that. And I can't tell you the stories that I read that I was like, that's not what happened. They're saying he didn't want to go to boot camp. He was a diva. He was an asshole. No, we would rehearse together. He wanted to work. They just thought energetically that John was the guy. And, you know, and I think in big productions like that, where you're not dealing with like famous names who are necessarily like commodities proven in the way that they are, they had to sort of see us all together to go, oh, this is not the right match. So I hated the fact that the internet really like attacked Val, because what a heartbreaking experience for him, you know? And I haven't seen him in a bunch of years, but I have a lot of love for him. I've seen some of his work, and it's really good, you know? And look, John, and then we went to boot camp, and then we were in it, and we didn't really quite know what happened. They just sent him home, and it was really tricky. And I know for the producers, it was not easy, and for casting, and obviously for Val and for John Seda, because John wasn't like, okay, I'll do it. 1, he needed to get in touch with his family, but 2, he wasn't trying to take someone's job, you know? It's very tricky, you know? But he looked at me because he knew Val and I had hung out in LA prior to going out there. And he looked at me, and I just, look, we're both neighborhood guys I'm from New York. He's from Jersey. We just kind of got each other. And he looked at me with this look that was like, hey man, this wasn't mine. And I just said to him, I got your back. And he like nodded. And from that point on, John and I were like a team. And I, you know, I did a TV show in Pittsburgh a few years ago, and John lives in Chicago now because he was doing all the, you know, Chicago shows. And I stayed with him and his wife, and had dinner with him and stuff. Like any chance I get when he comes to LA, we'll always try and get together. Like, you know, that is one of the best men in the world. He is one of the best dudes in the world. Solid, salt of the earth, raised 3 amazing kids, loves his wife. She loves him. They're kind of an inspiration of humans. So it's really cool. What do you want to know? You want Dale Dye stories? I give some Dale Dye stories.
Yeah.
I give you some Freddie Joe stories too. I mean,
Yes,
and
that
those were salty as fuck.
those.
So, yeah, to get off this sort of dark element of this. So, Captain Dye, Captain Dye came in and we were fucking terrified. Like they're screaming at us. So we go to set up our hooches, and all of a sudden these Marines are yelling at us, and they're like, "Who the fuck told you to set your hooches up east west? They go north south." And we're like, east. I don't even know what fucking. I don't know where the fuck I am. But really, what they just did, we had to rip them down, and then they were like, it's like they better be 6.5 inches apart or whatever. I think it was 6 inches. So like all of a sudden, because they were a little haphazard, now all of a sudden we're like in straight lines, and look, they did their thing. We're operating like a team. We're like, no, hey, move yours a little, and we're all building them, and we built our hooches, and and they get us around for a big school circle, and they start talking to us, and then Jacob Pitts always puts it this way. He goes, I don't know where he came from. I think out of the ground. But all of a sudden, Captain Dye goes, the general wants to talk to you. And we were like, who the fuck is the general? And then Tom Hanks just kind of like appeared.
Out of nowhere.
And he was like, hey, guys. And we're all like, hey. And he's talking to us, and he's telling jokes because it's fucking Tom Hanks. He's charming. But no one's laughing because Captain Dye has already scared the holy fuck out of us. And all of a sudden, Tom goes, hey, guys. Friday, what are you eating? What are you doing? He goes, hey guys, you're allowed to smile. This is fun. And we're like, huh? And he goes, it's okay, you can laugh. So then like we laugh, and he like welcomes us and da 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 da. And we're like, holy shit, that was Tom Hanks. That's really, really cool. And then as soon as he left, Captain Dye was like, you are going to eat one fucking meal with your jelly bellies until I decide you can have more than one meal a day, you fat asses. And they got us up. We fucking started running. And, we started every morning.
God.
We started every morning with like a 5-mile run and calisthenics. And that was the easiest part of the day. Captain Dye was like, you men are going to hit walls, and you're going to understand how little you need to survive. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
What have I got myself into?
100%. And look, I've said this before. It's the only way I can really, like, I was a college athlete, right? I was a college baseball player. So it was Bernthal. John Seda was a Gold Glove boxer. James Badgedale played semi-pro hockey. You had a bunch of, and the Aussie guys, they're just all fucking men. They're just like, and it doesn't matter if they're gay, they're straight. It doesn't make a difference. They're just like, Tom Budge, this beautiful musician, was like hunking around a fucking 50-pound mortar shell. And he's like, I got it, and take the play. Yeah, mate. And like, just and it didn't matter. Like, that's just they're workers, right?
Yeah.
But this is the hardest fucking thing I've ever done in my fucking life. Like physically, there were moments where I was like, I don't know if I'm getting through this.
Yeah. So
we'd go on these runs every morning, and then you started finding like this weird joy in it, like Captain Dye would sing these cadences, and we'd sing back. And then like in our platoon, like Lecky, me, and Barcelona became squad leaders, which was basically them like ranking us up. And then all of a sudden, like I'm singing cadences, and Captain Dye would tell us stories every night, and he basically took us from the beginning of the war all the way to Iwo and Okinawa, and basically told the stories of the Marines, and he'd be talking, and he smokes like a chimney, and he'd hock up a loogie, and he'd be like, get out and crawl, you son of a bitch. And then he'd keep fucking talking. Then someone would fart, and he would go, keep shouting, Lieutenant, we'll find you. And just like right on, always like quick with a joke, but also tough. Like the machine gun platoon, I think, had the most principal actors, right? Every platoon did, the mortars and the assault platoons. They all had guys, but there was like a lot of us. And, we had to learn how to break down the heavy and the light and set them up, and we sucked. And Captain Dye would just walk up, and he would look and he'd watch us run the drill, and he would go, "Machine guns, I am not fucking impressed," and then he would just walk away.
There'd be no criticism, no constructive give
No,
back. He
just
would just
you
say
suck.
that sucks.
And-
Get out.
And then we were like beating children. We were like,
What did
and
we
then we
do?
started like, I remember there was a day where we ran races, like a 20-yard dash to throw down the tripod, get the machine gun, load it, rack it, and fire. And with the light machine gun, the fastest was like 10 and a half seconds. And with the heavy, which is 50 pounds for the tripod figure, I think me and Ian did it in like 18 seconds.
Jeez.
We actually impressed them. Because you had like the ammo comes in boxes.
Yeah.
You gotta like open the box, pull out the thing, you know, and if it's not lined up right, that weapon will not rack and it will not fire. And we're firing blanks, but we're firing. And so it was they by scaring the shit out of us and beating the shit out of us, they got us to turn into a unit. And we didn't know each other's real names. We only knew each other's characters' names. We're only allowed to talk to each other in our character names. Keith Badge and I broke that once when I tried to start a fight with one of the Marines. And they wisely stopped me because that would have been the end of my days, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was also really funny because like I've told this story before, but it's my favorite from boot camp. You know, guys were out working with the M1 Garands, and JP didn't operate an M1. He, you know, like I wasn't going to use an M1. I used a Springfield and a 45 and a machine gun. So they took most of the guys out like a few hundred yards away to work on like firing the M1, reloading, et cetera, et cetera. And I sat and dug out the heavy machine gun pit. And I like to build things. So I made shelves. I made like a place to lie down. You know, like I filled sandbags. Like I made like a little house. And while I was doing that, Freddie Joe wanted two characters to come and see him. So, you know, he just mouths, I need such and such and such and such. And then what you have to do is call down the line. So I'm the guy there. So I got to be like, Gunny needs you. And they start screaming. I'm leaving out people's names so they don't get embarrassed. And I'm like, and all of a sudden everybody's screaming down the line. And all of a sudden these two fucking guys come fucking running. No. Yeah, yes, Gunny, you want to see us? And he looks at one, looks at the other, he goes, you still sucking his cock? And he goes, that's what I thought, as you were, and then just sends them back. Now, I grew up in fucking Queens, in a neighborhood. This is, to me, the ultimate shit talking I've ever seen in my life. And I go, and he looks at me and he goes, you think that was fucking funny? And now I'm like, and he goes, it was pretty fucking funny. And that was the moment that I was like, oh, I'll make it through this.
Yeah, I'm gonna be fine.
Like,
oh my gosh,
these guys are fucking with us, and we just gotta sort of like sack up and take it.
Yeah.
And then I think I lost 12 pounds in the 9.5 days of boot camp. When I came out, they had to refit me for my costumes because everything they had was just legitimately falling off me. And then we kept up with it. Bernthal, Seda, myself, and Ian Meadows every day. If we weren't working, and even if we were, we'd either start or end our day with a 5-mile run from where we were staying to this beach, up this rock and back. We did it every single day.
Wow,
we did push-up contests on set. Like, we just, as a unit, and I know that Lecky's group was the same, and I would, Scott Gibson has said his unit was a little bit different, but we stayed in it. Like, we had one guy, Arkosh, Australian guy, actor, beautiful actor, great man. Arkosh liked to read, and he was kind of like a solo cat, and he would go over there to read. And Bernthal and I would be like, "Hey, man, the fuck over here! You can read, but you read with us." And he would sit and he'd read his book and we'd leave him alone, but he sat next to us. And we sort of sat like that, you know, and we became friends, you know, when Seda and I shot that goodbye scene in episode 3. It was the first day we were on set where we weren't surrounded by a whole bunch of people we knew. All the extras were extras. They were no one we knew. And I wasn't rapping yet, but I was like 2 weeks away from leaving.
Yeah.
And we couldn't talk to each other. We sat down and Seda looked at me and I looked at him and he just went, big scene today. And I went, yeah. And he went, and we couldn't speak because we were so emotional because I was like, I'm leaving. I don't know how to leave this place. You know, it was cool. It was really cool.
There was one thing I've always been curious about in the times that I've watched The Pacific is the battle scenes where you very quickly throw down the weapon and everything. How was that shot? And that must have been exhausting to have that many cuts to different parts of, like, different points of view and stuff.
We just did it.
It just happened, and then they just
did it
cut
over and over
itself.
again. Yeah, like when we were shooting the Battle of Bloody Ridge, Bruce McKenna came up to us and said, "Look, guys, I wrote like an idea of what you'd say, but you guys know how to operate these weapons. You guys know how to communicate with each other. You do whatever you need to do to get through this." Like there were things, right? Like, you know, Barcelona was part of his Medal of Honor commendation was basically taking non-functioning weapons and fixing them in real time. You know, he did that. He unjammed a couple of water-cooled machine guns, but we just did it. And typically on a movie set, like something like a machine gun like that, if it's going to move from location to location, there's prop guys and weapon guys, and that's their job. But because of how Captain Dye trained us and focused us, you'd see, like, a lot of times we'd be like, we got it, we got the heavy, and we'd move it, you know, or like those fight sequences, you know, there's a lot choreographed, right? Where the explosions are and who's going to fall down and et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of it was just kind of done in real time. And, you know, it was definitely physically exerting, you know. But I will say the thing that I think made that easy for all of us was between Captain Dye kind of teaching us about who these people were through our own research. Every guy that I worked with felt a very, very high level of responsibility that these were men who did this and that we sure as hell needed to represent them with as much of our guts as we could, you know. Like I have JP's, they're not his actual ones, but they're replicas, like period replicas of his dog tags. And I used to take them with me to auditions when I got back, and I'd be like, "Hey, homeboy, like, you know, you know, give me a little magic. I want this job." But also the idea that we could represent them for what they went through. And I think because of that, and because we were young and we were fucking hungry, you know, we wanted to do that stuff. You know, we you know, before almost every take in battle or after like the barrage where we're, you know, buried in our why can't I think of the word, when we're after, you know, because it's Japanese barrage, the Marines and on Guadalcanal, the hair and makeup people would like quite literally have cups of dirt and they would put dirt on you. And we got to the point where before every take, we would just like throw dirt on each other and be like, we're good. And then we would talk shit, or like in that scene where we got dug out, Ian Meadows had this breakdown where he starts saying like, I want to go home. I want my mom. And originally in the script, I came out and slapped him in the face, which we shot. And then they just had me shake him. And, you know, it was kind of amazing in that sequence because we were all under there. And before we started the take, Ian is really working himself up into a really painful emotional experience, and all of us start like fucking screaming, and then we got silent. Like everyone treated it was like somber and holy. I remember Bernthal and Seda being like, we thought one of you got hurt or something was going on in there, and then because of that, and they're digging us out, we're all it was really special. It was a really special work environment. John Bernthal said this once. He said, best thing about this job is nobody cares what number you are on the call sheet or how famous you are. They only care about two things: how well you do your job and how good of a friend you are.
Yeah.
And that was, to me, like, that's the experience of that show.
Mm. Which is so wonderful, because I was going to ask if it changed you as a person, if it changed you as an actor, the way that you thought of life post finishing the shoot. Did it change anything for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember getting back, and a few years later, I was on a kind of like a date, and we were at this pool hall and with this girl, and she knew some guys there, and we started talking, and one of them recognized me from the Pacific, and he started talking shit about the military. And I said, look, man, this was done because of this and this and this and this. And he was basically talking about like people in the military. And I said, listen, every man and woman, every person in the military does their job for the person to their left and to their right. They don't do it for politics. They don't do it for any other reason than that sort of familial bond, that it's their responsibility to protect the person that they serve with. The politics are being done by pencil pushers and politicians and people who, I don't think always have the men and women and people who serve under them's best interest at hand, perhaps. But it gave me that kind of perspective. Yeah. It was a team sport in a way. That changed for me for sure. I think in a lot of ways, as an actor, I recognized that I belonged, that I was gifted enough and committed enough to be involved in something that special. I think that was definitely part of the process for me personally. And I think it taught me something that's a really after learning, which is that it's rare. You make friends on set, and I have friends there's been a couple jobs where I've made some incredibly good friends that I'm still very, very close with. But it is rare that a group of actors gets together and, this many years later, this many of us are still dear friends. I was on the phone with Keith Nobbs last night. Keith and I flew to Prague for Jacob Pitts's wedding, and we were essentially his best men. I was at the hospital for the birth of Bernthal's first son. Badge has 2 kids, and I know them. And Josh Hellman, when he comes back to the States and he's in LA, stays here. Toby Moore and his wife Michelle, are incredibly important people in my life. Claire Vanderboom, like it doesn't happen that often. It's just the nature of life, let alone the business. You're moving, if you're lucky, from job to job to job. But there was something, and the Band of Brothers guys knew it. And I'll never forget this. We were at the premiere, and almost all of the band guys were there. A couple weren't, but almost all of them. And Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks introduced them, and me and the guys, we got up to give them a standing ovation. And they stood up and they pointed at us and they were like, no, 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 this is your night. This is your night. And they gave us a standing ovation. And then that night at the after party, we kicked it with them, and we were all like, holy shit, it's fucking Band of Brothers guys. And to this day, if I bump in, like James Matteo and I were both in The Penguin, and Matteo, Cutlets, like Neil, they if I see them, they're like, Josh, how are you? And I'm always like, why do you know my name? How do you know the fuck I am? And to them, they're like, we understand the brotherhood that you guys have with each other because we have it, and you're the only other guys who get it, you know? And so it changed me that way. You know, doing theater does that sometimes, but even then, a lot of times you become a family and then you go on your way, and
Right.
some people stay in touch with, and some people you don't. Something about that job. I mean, you know, I'm in touch with a lot of those guys.
Did you feel like going into the Pacific, now now you can say so many years later, you're friends with the guys from band, you guys have a relationship. Going into it though, did you feel like you had big shoes to fill? Like,
Oh my God.
I mean, what
Are you
was like
kidding
that
me?
had to be so like, oh my God, we're the next ones to do
All
this.
right, so I'll tell you something. Yes, but I'm going to be really, really honest. My experience was,
Please do.
shit, I get to do this. Like, I was so fucking joyous. I was nervous. Like when Val got replaced,
Mhm.
we had chemistry read together, and I thought, well, fuck. Like, uh,
Right.
I was cast because we had good chemistry. I don't know if this is, but they kept me, and that was. But once I was on set, I had I want to say, other than like the 18 and 19 and 20-year-old actors, I think my resume was probably the shortest of the guys who were there. I had I'd done some theater and stuff like that, but like TV and film, I'd done not a lot. And so for me, you know, like I was literally a horse chomping at its bit, going like, let me in, coach. I can fucking win this race. And so when they let me do it, I just I was so joyous. I remember shooting the scene, the end of episode 2 with Seda about Manny's death, about Bernthal's death. And it was this quiet, simple little scene that can be really tricky for actors because it requires you as an actor to kind of just believe that your honest truth is enough, that you don't have to do something interesting. And we finished shooting it. And I remember walking away and going, wow, someone let me do that. And so I was like humbled, but I wasn't, which is funny, like naively, arrogantly, maybe. I wasn't nervous. I was just fucking grateful. I was grateful. When I saw that episode 3 where they'd expanded the role, I was almost in tears because I couldn't believe not only that I was in it, but they clearly liked what was going on with us enough that they're like, we need more of that. And then there was the rewrites on episode 1 because they had some really brilliant people watch it and say, this is what I don't understand. I don't know who these guys are. Then I finally know who they are, and you introduce me to these guys, but I don't know who they are. So the scene at Basilone's house where Manny and I come over for Christmas dinner, that was added after the fact. And we shot that in the reshoots. And all of that to me was just like, wow, this is happening. I'm doing this, you know? So some guys definitely felt that. They were nervous and scared and afraid of the judgment. And I totally get it. I might be that now. But at the time, I was just so fucking like, holy shit, someone's gonna let me do this. That I was joyous. I had the best time of my fucking life while I was there. Like of my life. It was the best.
What was your experience with Spielberg and Hanks? Obviously, Hanks delivers a tub thumping speech every single time he's around a big circle of guys.
Yeah,
Um,
so
how
you
was it
know,
working with them?
I mean, honestly, they weren't there. They were in the States, right? So I I remember there's a scene, um, I think they cut this scene. I, there's a scene where I know where we're like, I'm shaving and we're getting ready to, because Chesty Puller tells us like, that's where the term raggedy ass Marines came in, right? And he tells us to clean ourselves up, that we can't do anything about our clothes, but that we can like look ship shape. And I had this line that was tricky for me in the phrasing. So I flipped 2 words, and my director said, I need you to say that line exactly as written, as Tom Hanks wrote it for you.
Oh, wow.
It's like,
No pressure then.
correct. We will. And then I found the proper wording and I found what it meant in that way. And so it was kind of like that. They were just, and then, we were told like Spielberg watches dailies every day and he's giving notes on your performances. So like if no one's saying anything to you, they approve. And so that was kind of like that. They were sort of like, some of the guys met them at that callback. I never really did. Then we were doing the reshoots at the Barcelona house. And I'm sitting there. It's like me, Bernthal, or me, Seda, and Bernthal. And we're talking like this. And the dining room table's over there, and the living room's over here, and the front door's over here. And I'm chatting, and all of a sudden Bernthal goes, "Hey, motherfucker, that's fucking Tom Hanks." And I look and I go, "Holy shit, that's Tom Hanks." And then we make eye contact, and Tom Hanks goes, and I go, because I don't know what to do. And then Tom walks over and goes, "Hey, I'm Tom." And we go, "Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
know.
I know.
we know." And he goes, "I'm a real big fan of your work." And he goes, "Each of you," he goes, "You guys, I'm a real big fan of what the three of you have done." And
Wow.
I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? This is crazy. And then, like a year after this Pacific came out, Tom was doing a movie called Larry Crown, and Seda and I got a call asking us if we would play two cops in it. And I was like, yeah. And then I got to set and I saw Tom at the trailers and he went, and Tom's like 6'2" and I'm 5'6", and he was like, "Hey," and he picked me up and he hugged me and he swung me around. And I was like, okay, this is stupid. This is like not real life. It was awesome. I've never actually talked to Steven Spielberg, which is okay. He gave me the greatest job of my life. And also what he allowed me to do. And that's just because he's Steven Spielberg. Like he's producing our show and directing a movie and producing probably 8 other things. But I would love to, just so I could say, "Hey man, I want to thank you for that. I really do. I want to thank you for you trusting me with that role." And Tom is exactly what you think he's going to be. He's like charming and funny and light and so smart and kind. He's fucking kind. And I would imagine Steven is probably all of that too, just by the stuff they do, you know.
Yeah.
Do you watch it? Do you watch it back years
Yeah,
later?
have you ever watched it back?
Have you ever watched it back? Because I know a lot of people do like yearly or annual rewatches, or like, Memorial Day or Veterans Day is when they'll stretch it all out. Do you make time for it?
No,
No.
that I haven't. I watched it a few years ago. My nephew was 15 and he was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Let me show you this." And we watched it. And it's wild because one, I'm not like, I don't know if it's like, it feels like my ego doesn't go like, I gotta watch myself act. You know what I mean? I feel lucky to do it. But when I watch it, what happens to me is I get sort of transported into the moment. So like when I'm saying goodbye to Barcelona, I get choked up.
Mm.
Yeah.
My heart breaks because my heart was broken that day.
Mm.
When we have the scene at the end of episode 2, or when we're stealing the fucking cherries from the army, I get giddy. Like my body has like muscle memory, like they were almost my memory,
Yeah.
And and so there have been a couple times where I turn on the TV and it's on.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I can do, probably easier than watch myself, is watch the later episodes with the other dudes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I get to watch Jacob Pitts, Keith Nobbs, Scott Gibson, James Badgedale, Josh
Right.
Helm, Martin McCann. Like I get to watch these fucking beautiful actors be fucking beautiful,
Yeah.
Rami, those dudes. Like it's like I can celebrate them.
Right.
But it's weird, like I think this is an actor's job, is to sort of embody what you play. And I think when you do, you're taking flat words on a page and you have to make them your experience if you're doing it right, I think. And
Yeah.
so it becomes a part of you, like it's become like emotionally a part of me, um that I like it there, you know.
Hmm.
And so if I share it with someone, we can watch it, you know, and I can say, here's what was going on. Like, here's what was going on over here and all that kind of stuff. So it's cool.
That's
That's
beautiful.
great.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that is such a sweet note to end on.
It's like quite truly like a pleasure. You guys are so lovely
Thank
and
you.
Thank
and
you.
I love the fact that this many years later, you know, the Pacific still holds place.
Mm,
And that's pretty humbling,
yeah.
It's really lucky
Well,
that
it brings a whole generation to life for people who don't know anything about it. Children now, especially, are so far removed.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
shit kids
seeing it.
right
Yeah.
now don't remember not you weren't born when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
which, yeah,
20-year-old don't. So,
yeah,
there's a different relationship I think that we all had with in both countries with our military and things like that. And the last
Yeah.
few years have been pretty tricky
Yeah.
to kind of decipher like what's going on. But
Yeah.
back then, I think it was clear,
Mm,
really clear,
yeah.
and and so it was easier to celebrate. And the Pacific also did something I think that kind of bridged that, like the band. Sorry, I know we're wrapping this up.
you're fine.
Band was a celebration of that generation, and the Pacific was post 9/11, where we'd all been really affected and the world changed.
Yeah.
And I think the Pacific was different and probably more difficult to watch because of that, in a way, because it's not a celebration. It's like a look at what war does to men,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't do anything good to any of them. Like Lecky Lecky said that he would. I mean, like Lecky was haunted. I met Sid Phillips at the premiere, and he's an old, gentle man, smiles, and I was like, "What an honor, sir!" And I asked him about the sledge, and he said, "Well, Eugene never could let go what happened in that war, and that it haunted him to the day he died." And he became a doctor because he wanted to give life, not take it anymore, and did a beautiful thing. But like the
Mm,
weight of what going to war does to
mhm.
people, is 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 important for us to see, and it's important for us to understand, I think. So, yeah. So, and it's been a real pleasure chatting with you guys.
Thank
Thank you
you for
so
doing it with
much.
us.
You're welcome.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
All right. Take
Thank
care.
you everyone for
Thank
listening.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.